Hello ladies and gentlemen, Andrew here, and it's been a while, but welcome back to the book club. This is just a video series where I read a book, we sit down, chat about it here on YouTube, you ask me questions in the comments, we have a good discussion, and then also hopefully you guys are recommending me books to read in the future, and I do need a new book to read, so suggestions please in the comments would be much appreciated. Now, we do have one particular book that we're looking at today. It's very special, actually, especially to me, because it's written by a fellow alumnus. Alumni. I don't really know the difference between all of those. However, it is written by a graduate of Trinity College Dublin, which is where I got my master's degree, so it's pretty cool that a fellow student wrote this. And it is by Naoise Dolan. It's called Exciting Times, a Novel. Ultimately, this book is a really cool story. It's fiction. I don't usually read fiction, but I dove into it, especially because of the Trinity connection, but also it was an awesome book that was recommended. This book is a story all about a main character who goes off from her native land of Ireland over to China and has this different experience of engaging with the culture, falling in love, sort of, and then falling in love again, this whole romantic saga plus cultural saga, and you get to experience it through the lens of this Irish girl. It's really unique, it's really interesting. Probably the key thing for me is that I learned a lot about the Irish culture and their view on the world. There are also some things as an American I had to look up the meaning to, because even in the book they kind of make fun of / talk about some of the euphemisms that the Irish culture has, and at least the younger generation, the more millennial people, use in just normal language. I had to look some of those up, what they mean, but it was really cool, really fun, really interesting. Now, I did read this book on a Kindle on my phone, so I don't have a physical copy, but I'm trying to get more into the digital book reading just because I travel a bunch, so I'm able to have unlimited books with me all the time. Now, let's dive into some of the notes that I wrote while I read this interesting story. The first note that I wrote actually came from chapter 5. It says, "For Brits, class was like humility. You only had it as long as you denied it." Now, another theme in this book was the main character. She has a romantic relationship with a guy from England. So she talks a lot about British culture, and one of those topics is that Britons like to say or distinguish or let people know in some manner that they are of a certain class or have a certain level of intellect. So she mentions that here, where throughout the story, the British people that go along in this journey, in this story, like to let people know that they have a certain level of class, but they also try to deny it at the same time, which ultimately I think a lot of people do, and it's something that we have in our culture in general, that, at least in America, there is such a harsh push by our society to attain certain titles or certain status. So that is a goal that society pushes on us, and I've certainly felt that, and I've fallen prey to that many times. And I think in the back of my mind, I'm always trying to figure out a way to let people know I'm important. And I don't know if that's a flaw in society, if that's a flaw in my character, if that's something we should be striving for. Let me know what you think in the comments. But that is a deep thing, at least in American culture, that drive to obtain that certain level of status in society. Ultimately, I do think that's probably something around the world in most cultures, but again, let me know what you think about that topic. All right, next note. Okay, this comes from chapter 7, and I don't think I mentioned our main character's name. Her name is Ava. She then has a romantic, some type of relationship with a guy named Julian, and then later on has another romantic relationship with a girl named Edith. Super interesting storyline, but here we go. From chapter 7. "My desire was for Julian's feelings to be stronger than mine. No one would sympathize with that. I wanted a power imbalance, and I wanted it to benefit me." Just a quick glimpse into Ava's mindset in terms of relationships. Now, the relationship between Ava and Julian, not the most healthy. If you'll read this book, you'll learn to understand. But I do think we all have that sense of yearning where we want our significant other to like us or love us more than we love them. I think it is a bit selfish. Maybe that's also something that's just in our nature as humans. We want people to want us. Now, if you look into music, you'll see that theme in songs a lot. But I empathize with that as well, especially since I've had relationships in a similar way where it's kind of confusing. You're not sure how the other person is feeling, especially in those situations where you're not sure how that other person is feeling about you. That makes you want them to want you more. So I totally empathize with that, and she is in a difficult situation. You'll have to read the book to fully understand their relationship. I totally recommend you doing so. Another note from chapter 21, you still put more time and energy into showing you don't love me than anyone has ever put into showing me they do. That's from Ava. Ava said that. Let me read that one again. It's pretty deep. You still put more time and energy into showing you don't love me than anyone has ever put into showing me they do. So this is obviously indicative of the troubled relationship that Ava and Julian have. So Julian is always kind of on the cusp of saying that he really cares for Ava, but then doesn't say it, but then does something that shows her that he does care, but then is also very reserved and kind of hidden in terms of showing his feelings. So they kind of battle back and forth trying to determine the amount of love that they share for one another. This is kind of sad because it says that Ava has had people that have shown they love her in some manner, but ultimately, obviously, not a healthy way because Julian's lack of effort has been more impactful than the other people's efforts to show her love. Super sad, and thankfully, the end of the story does get better. From chapter 22, I enjoyed conversations where I wasn't attempting to persuade anyone, where I just said precisely what I thought. I got tired of making myself acceptable. So this is Ava again, and she is the narrator and main character of this entire story. We follow her journey throughout. But she has had troubled relationships. Sometimes she has trouble understanding herself, and this says and shows her character growth in terms of she's getting sick of pretending to be something. And she's finally stepping up and saying, all right, I'm starting to learn that I can just stand up and be who I want to be, say what I want to say, and there may be consequences, but I've realized the situation and understood it enough to say, all right, I'm going to deal with those consequences because I'm tired of faking it. Now that's real for all of us, totally. For me, I have always felt some societal pressure, peer pressure, to conform to what society says you should do. I feel like going through your middle school and teenage years, that's what society is doing all the time. Just pressing you to do and be something that society deems as acceptable. It kind of sucks. Thankfully, at least on YouTube and with the millennial generation and the younger generation, Generation Z, they're really bucking that trend and saying, yo, be weird. Be who you are, do what you want to do, and I'm here for that. We need a lot more of that, and you kind of see that transition happen in this story too, which is really cool. From chapter 28, you keep describing yourself as this uniquely damaged person, when a lot of it is completely normal. I think you want to feel special, which is fair, who doesn't? But you won't allow yourself to feel special in a good way, so you tell yourself you're especially bad. This is Edith telling this to Ava. And Edith is this elegant, intellectual woman who is from Hong Kong and befriends Ava and then ultimately becomes a romantic partner. But she does say, and kind of calls Ava out, saying, you say that you're damaged and you have all of these wrong things about you. But Edith says, nah, you're just saying that you have these issues when ultimately everyone has those types of issues. Everyone's going through something. You just want to use those to feel special. And this is at a point in time where they're starting to figure out their relationship. They're bouncing back and forth, trying to figure out where each other stands, especially because it is kind of a love triangle situation with Julian, Ava, and Edith. It's really confusing. You need to read the whole story. It's pretty cool. From chapter 32, everyone's family is different. They all have different relationships and different norms. People are raised differently. It's important to remember that. This is my favorite quote from the entire book. It really makes you think about how different people are and why they're different. Everyone has a different family life. Everyone's growing up years are structured differently. Some people have tons of money, some people have no money, some people have an average amount of money, some people have both parents, some people have no parents, some people have one parent. It's a really difficult situation to bring all of that together, all of that baggage that an individual has, and then try to mesh it with somebody else, sometimes groups of people. Think about your friends for an example. All of your friends have different stories. They all have different baggage. They all have different experiences. None of them are the same. None will ever be identical. And that is cool. That's what makes them unique. That is what diversity is about. All of these schools, these institutions, these businesses, they Photoshop these images together with every different race and ethnicity so that they look like a diverse organization. That is not diversity. True diversity is recognizing what they're talking about right here, that every person has a unique experience, multiple unique experiences. And they can bring those unique experiences to the table to help an organization work better, to generate more creative ideas, to make sure that the organization is touching the lives of every different individual in the population. For us individually, it's also important to sit back and empathize and realize that everyone is different because of their different circumstances. It doesn't make them wrong, it doesn't make them weird, it just makes them who they are. And the sooner that our society can recognize that, the better. Sadly, it is taking much longer than it actually should. But hopefully we'll keep pressing for it and we'll someday become the society that we really should be, where we appreciate everyone for their different experiences, because it's a good thing. This is from chapter 43. The truth is, you like Julian because he enables this perception you have of yourself as a detached person. Plenty of people are willing to offer you intimacy. That terrifies you. You prefer feeling like no one will ever love you. So this is Edith also again talking to Ava. And now we're at the point where Ava and Edith are in some form of relationship. They say they love each other, but then ultimately Ava is still kind of with Julian, and she's torn between Julian and Edith, and she's a little confused. And Edith is not having it. She's saying, yo, you need to figure it out because I'm going to leave if you're not going to figure it out. Now, Ava seems to have feelings for both people, but obviously says she's trending more toward Edith and cares more for Edith, but then also is just always stuck on Julian for some reason. And then this phrase, this quote, is Edith's way of calling out Ava and saying, yo, we see that you still have feelings for Julian. I don't know why, because he doesn't treat you well, but you still have something there, and you should probably figure it out. I mean, it's real. Sometimes we all struggle with the intensity that intimacy comes from. I'm not sure what that phrase actually meant. We all struggle sometimes with the deepness of the emotion that is intimacy. We all experience it different. It all happens in different times. But when you fall in love with someone so deeply, that can be terrifying. Especially if you're falling in love with someone of the same gender and you've never had those emotions before. It can be absolutely terrifying. So I understand what Ava is going through from an outsider's perspective in saying, hey, this is a totally new emotion that I'm feeling for you, Edith. I'm so scared, and Julian is Ava's safe space. She knows how to handle that situation. She's been with him for a while. She knows what's going on. So that's safe for her. But being with Edith is scary and intense. And it makes sense why she's hesitant. I don't really know what advice I would give her, other than sometimes you just have to take the jump and experience it. Because my philosophy in life is that life worth living is where you're able to, one, help other people live a better life, but two, experience emotion. As humans, we are some of the only life forms in the universe that we know of that can feel all of these different spectrum of emotions. And if you live a life that's just like, meh, it's okay, like, that's fine, you're gonna live an average life if that's what you're happy doing. But I think life is so much better when you can experience all of the spectrum of emotions. Sure, sometimes sadness and anger and loneliness, those suck, absolutely. But isn't it cool that you get the experience of feeling lonely and afraid and sad, because that means you've had other experiences that are the exact opposite, that you felt happiness, joy, and excitement, and community, and togetherness. You felt those amazing emotions. That you can also feel those other deep, despairing emotions too. That is what life is about. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. All right, continuing. Here is the final thing that I highlighted from chapter 50. I'd given away most of my clothes. On the phone to mom, about to move, I'd mooted throwing them down the garbage chute. She'd said that would have been a waste. I know I said, but so was buying them. Then I decided they'd lose their history faster if I donated them. Soon they'd stretch around other people and crease where their knees and elbows bent. If I dumped them, they'd have gone on fitting me. Whew, that's intense. Okay, so she had this negative experience, whether it be with Julian or with Edith, where they broke up and they're trying to get over one another. So Ava is saying, if I just throw my clothes away, if I burn them, if I bury them, for the rest of eternity, they will continue to fit her. Now, if she donates them to Goodwill, for example, and other people purchase them, the clothes will no longer uniquely fit her. They will stretch to the other person's body shape. They'll start to smell like the other person instead of Ava. That is a wildly intense thing to think about in terms of a breakup. Because a lot of people, at least in some of these intense breakup videos that I've seen on YouTube, they end up burning everything that they have of that other individual, or they'll burn some of the clothes that they wore for their first date, or whatever. Now, sure, burning them may be a good satisfaction feeling, but if you do really think deeply about it, there is something so frightening and intense about donating your clothes, because they ultimately will change shape and become someone else's. If you burn them, they're yours forever. You burn them. The last person to wear them was you. The last person to fit them was you. The last smell on the clothes was you. But to truly get rid of clothes, even though it doesn't sound like it, is to donate them and have someone else make a life out of them. Pretty wild. Pretty good thought. Plus, it helps other people get clothes too, especially if you donate them to someplace like Goodwill. That ultimately benefits the community too. Wow. Breakups really bring out some intense emotion, and like I was talking about, emotion is good, you're supposed to feel it, and it helps you generate things like that. Like thinking about donating your clothes is a better way to get rid of them and over that person that you were dating or with or in love with, because they will become someone else's. Deep stuff right there. All right, that is it. That's all I got. This book was absolutely phenomenal. As I mentioned, this was a fiction book. Fiction. Fiction is not real. Correct. I always struggle with those for some reason. This was a fiction story. It was a novel. It was great. I don't usually prefer to read fiction books, but this one is really good. You should absolutely check it out. If you didn't know, you can get it on your Kindle device. It's really good. And you can also get it, of course, as a physical book if you do like physical books. I'm not knocking them. Physical books are great. So check it out. It's a wonderful read. Naoise Dolan is the author of Exciting Times. Check it out. Read it. Let me know what you think, especially in the comments. Hit me up with some of your thoughts, especially if you've read it or if you haven't read it and are thinking about reading it and want to chat about some of the topics we talked about. I would love to know what you have to think, and especially because some of these are deep topics to talk about. Even just relationships in general. great conversations ahead in the comments. Let me know. Also, if you have a book to recommend, I'm looking for something new to read. It took me a little while to get through this book, as you can tell from the gap between the last book club video and this one, but now I am ready to keep rolling. So suggest your books, please. I would love that in the comments. You can also hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. Drop me book recommendations. I have a running list of every book recommendation that I've ever gotten, so I would love to add some more to that. All right, I will see you in the next video. I hope that you are reading some good books out there and that you're also staying safe. See you soon.